everybody, it's Elena again, and I'm back with video number 8. I cannot believe I'm this far into it already. I'm super excited about that. In today's video, I'll be talking about numbers 65 through 61 of the top 100 boy names in the year 2014 and some less popular or alternatives for them. And at number 65 in 2014 was the name Colton. Colton is an English name that means coal town, coal as in C-O-A-L. There is an actor, a really gorgeous actor named Colton Haynes, and there's of course the singer Colton Dixon. That's who I always think of as far as celebrities go with the name Colton. My husband also has a little cousin named Colton. He's super, super adorable. Colton has been in the top 100 boy names since 2008, and it's been in the top 1,000 boy names since 1982, so it has been popular for quite a while. My first alternative I have for Colton is my favorite, and it is very daring, and I just love it, and it is cotton, which is of course an English word that refers to the plant or the tree or the fabric. I've actually been seeing this name come up more and more often lately in baby name forums and groups and stuff. I definitely associate this with Cotton Mathers, who was a Puritan, and I think Cotton is very, very usable in 2015 because word names are in right now, nature names are in right now, the two-syllable names ending in N or N. I think Cotton, of course, would make a great Colton alternative because they're only one letter different in spelling and pronunciation. My next Colton alternative I have is Colson, and Colson is an English name that means son of Nicholas. Colson can also be spelled C-O-U-L-S-O-N. However, someone who likes Colton might like the spelling I have on the screen a little bit more just because it's super similar to Colton. So recently in the news, there was an actress who passed away, and her name was Catherine Coulson, and she was known as Log Lady from the show Twin Peaks. And from the amount of times I saw people mention about how sad they were about her passing away, she must have been a very beloved character from that show. I've also met several people with Coulson as the last name, and of course surname names are super in right now. And like I mentioned a little bit earlier, I think Coulson would make a great Colton alternative because of its super similar sound. And my last Colton alternative I have is Coleman. Coleman is an English name that is a variant of a name that means dove, so really sweet meaning. It is a very common surname in the US, and in my last video I mentioned there's an actor named Coleman Domingo, so there's a fun association there. He's from the show Fear of the Walking Dead. Coleman was ranked at 950 in 2014, and it's actually always been in the top 1,000 boy names, interestingly enough. Have you guys ever met a Coleman? I never have before. Let me know if you have in the comments below. Of course, again, I think Coleman would make a great Colton alternative for its super similar sound. And at number 64 in 2014 was the name Josiah. Josiah is a Hebrew name that means God supports. I think this name is just gorgeous. Josiah is a name that is on basically all of my church friends' favorite boy name list, so I have never even considered using it because of that. And I do know a young Josiah through church who I think is about 6 years old, and his middle name is West, so Josiah West. Is that not a cool name or what? The biblical Josiah is a wonderful association. He became king at 8 years old, and he led his country really well, so he's known as the good king in the Old Testament. I also saw there's a comic book superhero from the DC comic books named Josiah Power, so that's a fun association as well. Josiah has been in the top 100 boy names since 2008, and it is rising right now, but for good reason. It's a gorgeous name. My first Josiah alternative I have is Moriah. Moriah is a Hebrew name that means seen by God. It is the name of a biblical mountain. It is also the name for Mount Zion. Moriah is associated with an incredible Old Testament story where Abraham trusts God enough that when God tells him you need to go sacrifice your son, Abraham is going to go do it, because he knows God will save his son. And so God tells him, don't do that. I see that you trust me and you have wonderful faith. And that was on Mount Moriah that story took place. There's also a mountain in Nevada in the US called Mount Moriah. And I think Moriah would make a great Josiah alternative for its really similar sound. You just switch out 2 of the letters and it's the same name. The next Josiah alternative I have is Jeriah. Jeriah is a Hebrew name that means taught by God. I really like that meaning. And Jeriah is someone who's mentioned just briefly in the Old Testament in the Bible. Something I found really interesting when I searched this name because I couldn't find much on it at all. But if you spell it Jiriya, that's actually a Japanese name with the same pronunciation that means young thunder. And Jeriah is the name of a character from the manga or anime that's called Naruto with that Japanese spelling. I think Jeriah would make a great Josiah alternative because they're both Old Testament Hebrew names. They both start with J and they both end in Aya, of course. And my last Josiah alternative I have is Josiah. Josiah is a Hebrew name that means strengthened by God. I am loving these meanings of these names. Josiah is the name of a man who was just briefly mentioned in 1 Chronicles in the Old Testament in the Bible. This name is so rarely used that when I Googled it, I would only find it on name sites and biblical sites. It is so uncommon. If you want a rare, unusual name, absolutely use Josiah. And of course, it makes a great Josiah alternative because their sounds are almost identical. I love Josiah. At number 63 in the year 2014 was the name Grayson, which means son of a man with gray hair, of course. It's an English name. I always think of Grayson Chance, the singer, who spells it actually Greyson. I really like that association. I looked a lot of his songs. Grayson has been in the top 100 boy names since 2011 and has been in the top 1,000 boy names since 1984, and it is definitely steadily rising. It's very trendy. It fits in with several trends like surname names and names ending in S-O-N, like I've mentioned in some of these past videos. My first Grayson alternative I have is Gray with either of these spellings. I have personally always liked the Grey spelling more, and I looked them up sometime in the last couple of years, and I discovered that the Grey spelling is actually the original spelling of the word or color gray. And then the Gray spelling would just be the anglicized form. There is a rising actor named Gray Damon. How cool of a name is that? And he's gorgeous too. I've also seen the name Gray used on girls, and I do think it's useful for girls. Believe it or not, I adore gray as a color. I own a lot of gray clothing, and I think the color gray is usually associated with, I don't know, sadness and stuff, but it just feels very comforting and peaceful to me. The Grey spelling was in the top 1,000 boy names for a few years in the late 1800s and early 1900s, but the Gray spelling has never been in the top 1,000 boy names in the US. Of course, I think Gray makes a great Grayson alternative because Gray is in the name Grayson. My next alternative for the name Grayson is Brayden. Brayden is an English name that means Gray Valley. Very cool picture that comes to mind with that. There's actually a young rapper named Grayden Squares. There's actually a young actress named Sprague Grayden. Sprague Grayden, you heard that right. That is her name. So it's of course a surname name. It does fit in with the Aiden name trend, and I can't believe I'm even suggesting this name because of that. However, it's only one letter different from Grayson, so of course it makes a perfect alternative for Grayson. My last Grayson alternative I have is Greenlee. Greenlee is an English name that means green meadow. This can also be spelled Greenlee, and there is a town in Arizona with that spelling. I think Greenlee would be really cool to see on a little boy in 2015, and I think it makes a great Grayson alternative because they're both two syllables, they're both surname names, both of them have colors in their names, and they both start with GR. At number 62 in the year 2014 was the name Brayden with this spelling, which is actually just a unique, aka made up spelling of Brayden with the Braden or Bradan spelling. Those are Irish names and they mean salmon. Brayden with this spelling first entered the top 1,000 boy names in 1991, and it's currently going down a little bit in popularity after, of course, rising very quickly. There are actually 5 spellings of this name in the top 1,000 boy names, so Brayden is insanely popular. I find it interesting that it's been in the top 1,000 boy names since 1991 because I only started meeting Braydens after about 2005, I think, and basically all the Braydens I know are ages 10 and under, but I have met tons. I've worked at 3 daycares and an elementary school, and Brayden is a name that's in most classrooms. I also babysat a Brayden a couple of years ago. My first Brayden alternative I have is Brady, which is an Irish name that means broad. I'm sure any of you that have been watching my channel for a few years figured I would mention this name because Brady is my maiden name. I do love the sound of Brady. I have a first cousin whose mom's maiden name was Brady, and his first name is Brady. And once upon a time, before I was with my husband, I had the combination Simon Brady first and middle in my top combos. Once I got married, Brady doesn't work with my last name, and also I feel like my cousins should have dibs on that name since this is his first name, but I think it's a wonderful name. People, of course, associate this name with the Brady Bunch, but who doesn't love the Brady Bunch? And there's also an actor named Brady Corbett that I associate this name with as well. Brady was at 195 in 2014. It was in the top 100 in the years 2008 and 2007. It's always been in the top 1,000 boy names, and it is currently going down in popularity. Of course, I think Brady makes a great Brayden alternative because they have super similar sounds. My next Brayden alternative is Bayard or Bayard. This is an English name that comes from a French word that means bay-colored, which would also kind of mean like redhead-colored. If you look up the name Bayard or Bayard, you will find some really cool associations. There were some mythical medieval French horses and knights with this name. When you search Bayard, you're going to find things about that, and I just find that fascinating. That might be a cool room theme, like knights and horses. I also found the name Bayardo, which is just this name with an O at the end, and it's the Spanish form of this name, so you could go that route as well. This name would also be cute if you have a good chance of your child being a redhead, because of course it kind of means that. Bayard or Bayard was actually in the top 1,000 boy names 2 times in the 1880s, but it has not not been since then. I think Baird makes a great Brayden alternative for its similar sound, and they're both 2 syllables and surname names starting with B. My last Brayden alternative I have is Brayden. Brayden is an English surname, and it's the Gaelic form of the original Brayden spelling, which means salmon again. Brayden is a really uncommon name. I found that there were some English villages in the UK called Brayden, but that's about all I could find this name. I also think Brayden could be like an updated form of Bradley, which is getting a little bit dated, though it's still very handsome. Of course, Brayden makes a great Brayden alternative because it's really similar sound and they have the same meaning and origin. At number 61 in the year 2014 was the name Robert. Robert is a German name that means bright fame. You have to be living under a rock to not know any Roberts. I personally know tons of them. I think the majority of English-speaking people probably have someone in their family named Robert, or would consider Robert to be a family name. There are tons of celebrities with this name, of course, such as Robert De Niro, the actor, Robert Redford, Robert Downey Jr., and Robert Pattinson from the Twilight movies. This name has always been in the top 100 boy names in the US, and it's been number 1 in the US several times in the past, though it is definitely going down in popularity. I have personally never cared for the sound of this name. I think biblical names, since they've been around for literally thousands of years, will always sound classic to me, but since Robert's not biblical and it's going down in popularity and there's so many old people with this name, I definitely find it dated personally. The other thing about Robert is a lot of times people will say, I want to use this because it's a family name and so I'll use it in the middle name spot. But I have met tons and tons of people with Robert as the middle name. So the alternatives I have for Robert are going to be names that all 3 could easily honor a Robert as well, if that is a family name for you. My first Robert alternative I have is Rupert. Rupert is the English form of Robert, and that of course means bright fame again. I think this name is so adorable and handsome and totally needs to be used more in the US. I think of Rupert Grint, who played Ronald Weasley in the Harry Potter movies, and I also think of Rupert Everett, who's a British actor as well. I also think of this super adorable children's show called Rupert, where the main character is a bear named Rupert. I actually remember watching that a lot when I was little, and that could also be a cute room theme for a little boy's bedroom. This name was always in the top 1,000 boy names up through the year 1952, and it has not been in the top 1,000 boy names in the US since then, so it is totally ready for a comeback. Of course, I think Rupert makes a great Robert alternative for its similar sound and same meaning, and again, like I mentioned earlier, it could easily honor a Robert as well. My next Robert alternative I have is Robertson, which of course just means son of Robert. In 2015, when people say the name Robertson, they're almost certainly going to associate it with Duck Dynasty, the show about the Christian family that makes the duck calls. I think that is a wonderful association. I really admire a lot of those people from that show. There's of course also actress Britt Robertson. Again, I think Robertson would make a great Robert alternative because it can honor a Robert, and Robert could also just be a nickname for Robertson. And my last Robert alternative I have is Gilbert. Gilbert is a German name that means bright promise. I love that meaning so much. A lot of people associate this name with the character Gilbert Blythe from the Anne of Green Gables movies and book series. I know I've mentioned it many times, but those are my all-time favorite book series. I just love him so much. He's a wonderful character. And Gilbert is actually in my top boy names right now. In fact, there's a good chance if we have another little boy that his name will be Gilbert. A lot of people also associate this name with the movie What's Eating Gilbert Grapes? And there's also actor Gilbert Gottfried, who did the voice of Iago from Aladdin. This name was ranked at 894 in 2014. It's always been in the top 1,000 boy names in the US, and for several years in the 20s and 30s, it was in the top 100 boy names as well. I think Gilbert would make a great Robert alternative because they're both 2 syllables, ending in Bert, and I do think because it does end in Bert that it could honor a Robert as well. That is all I have for video number 8. I'm really hoping to get started on video number 9 soon and can hopefully have it out this week as well. And thank you so much for watching. Please let me know what your favorites of the alternatives I listed were and any others I didn't mention that you like. Bye!